when you want to spend more money than you have, what do? You borrow money, right? How does a government borrow money? They issue bonds. You buy the bonds, they promise to pay you back with interest yearly, and then at the time the bond matures, they give you back the principal after a number of years. These years can range anywhere between 1 to 50 years, just depending on the country and how they structure their bonds. Generally, the longer bonds last, the longer they last till maturity, the more interest you get. This isn't a set in stone rule, but it's roughly how it works. So who buys these bonds? You do. Foreign governments do, pension funds do, which is usually how you purchase them through your pension fund. Other countries' central banks buy them too. Pretty much everyone holds US bonds, and most countries hold each other's bonds to an extent. But here's the trick that I talked about. You know that trick that they use? A country's own central bank can buy its own country's bonds, which is nuts. Because when that happens, the government has effectively borrowed money from itself, and then it has to pay interest to itself. It's like if you printed your own credit card, went on a spending spree, and now you owe yourself a bunch of money and you pay interest to yourself. It sounds kind of broken because it kind of is broken. And it's a bit of a cheat code for governments. Actually, it's the cheat code that runs the entire economy of pretty much all of our countries to an extent. But remember, printing money to yourself, or printing money and borrowing it yourself, it means that you have to pay yourself interest, which means you have to print more money. Just remember that, printing money. Lock the printing money into your head, because we'll talk about that again in a second. Now look, I said at the start that the combined debt of the US, the UK, the EU and Japan is around $70 trillion. That's roughly 70K per person living in those nations. It's an obscene amount of money. Can this debt be repaid is the question. Well, there's only really 4 ways a country gets out of debt this big. Let's break them down. Option 1, you outgrow the debt. That means a country grows its economy so fast that the debt becomes tiny in comparison. This is how the US escaped the Second World War debt pile that they had in the 50s. It is, unfortunately, right now, mathematically impossible. The US economy grows at around 2% a year, and the interest bill alone, like I said, is $1 trillion and growing every quarter. And the UK, for example, they grow even more slowly. Germany has been in or near a technical recession for the last 2 years. Japan has been stuck in low single-digit growth for like 30 years. You can't outgrow debt that compounds faster than your economy does. That's the problem. And the US is hoping that AI just like magically solves this problem. But AI can't even tell us how many R's in the word strawberry. So I think we might be screwed. Also, since when is hope a strategy? Like, when is hope a strategy? You have to have an actual bloody plan, not just rely on hope. Anyway, the size of the leverage is now so large that even a generational productivity miracle would only buy a little bit of extra time. So option two is you default. A country simply refuses to pay what it owes. The 1976 UK story we just walked through is what happens just before a country default. Nobody does it voluntarily. The political and the economic cost is just unthinkable. A US default, by the way, would freeze the global financial system overnight. It would be a disaster the likes of which we've never seen before. A UK or German default would probably do the same to Europe. A Japanese default would unravel half of Asia in a week, cause a lot of problems globally too. So you have to understand how deep these countries are into bonds. Japan holds roughly $1.2 trillion of US bonds. The UK has about $1 trillion. If the US defaults, it's an absolute disaster for both these countries. So this is the option that exists on paper that never really gets picked because it just causes too much chaos. Although who knows, maybe this time we might need to. Anyway, option 3 is austerity. Cut spending, cut services, cut benefits, cut payrolls, cut investment, cut everything, just cut. Greece tried this, they tried this seriously. Between 2010 and 2018, 8 years of cuts, unemployment hit a peak of 28%, and the political cost destroyed the government, right? The country went through 5 prime ministers in 4 years, a record that the UK was desperately trying to beat, but they are failing because they've only managed to go through 5 in 5 years. The UK even fails at serious face. Okay, look at the political climate in every country we're talking about right now. Look at the protests, look at the rise of political fringes, look at how thin the patience has already become with the government. We're already drowning in inflation. The cost of food has gone up like, people say 30%, but to me it feels more like 50 to 100%. Energy has doubled. People are suffering already. You cannot tell You cannot tell citizens already squeezed by inflation that they have to absorb yet another decade of pain because politicians lost control of spending, because they were irresponsible. And why is there so much why is their incompetence rather our problem anyway? That's my question. Why should we pay for their incompetence? I guess shit rolls downhill like it always does. Anyway, whatever. Before I get angry, let's speak about option 4, because austerity I don't think is going to happen, because people are pissed off enough already that austerity is just going to tip things over. So option 4 is inflate it away. You quietly debase the currency so that the debt, which is fixed in dollars or pounds or euros or yen, becomes smaller in real terms, which is what many, including me, believe Kevin Walsh and Trump plan to do. Oh, and obviously the UK, the EU, and Japan, etc., will follow suit. We're going to come back to Walsh's plan in a second, but let's break down how inflating debt away works first. It's kind of a cycle, right? The government spends too much money, so they issue bonds. That's how they borrow money. We talked about that. But now they owe a lot of interest. So they print money to pay off the interest. This is inflation. It devalues the currency. Combine devaluation with incompetence, and then you need to borrow even more next year, and then it just becomes a cycle, which makes the interest repayments higher, which means they have to print more money. This is basically the debt cycle. It's a trimmed down basic version of the debt cycle. Now, you might be thinking, surely the central banks won't allow this. They have inflation targets. They have independence. They have legal mandates. I'm sorry if you think that. Anyway, watch what's already happening across the 4 countries we've already started with. I mean, Japan first, because Japan is in the end state. The Bank of Japan now owns roughly half of all Japanese government bonds in existence. When a central bank owns half of its own country's debt, the debt is not really debt anymore in any meaningful sense of the word. It's an accounting entry between 2 parts of the same government. They are literally paying themselves, like I think it's 45 billion per year of interest to service their own debt. The world is going insane, really. By the way, guys, if you want to stay updated with what's happening on the markets and my personal strategies, make sure you subscribe to my free newsletter. Like I said, it's free. I publish a report on everything you need to know about the markets every single morning. Basically, I read 20 to 30 articles, I summarize them so you don't have to. There's a link below.